On the night of November 14, 1825, a fire log fell out of its grate at the district courthouse near the shores of Lake Erie. The resulting blaze badly damaged the building, giving officials an excuse to relocate the district capital to a more populated area to the northwest. St. Thomas and Delaware were considered and then rejected when speculators jacked up real estate prices. Officials eventually chose the area around London, on land Simcoe had secured for the British government. Construction began on the London District Courthouse, modelled after Talbot's ancestral castle in Ireland. It was the only part of his feudal dream that was realised. It was during this time that London earned its first original title, the City in the Forest, later shortened to the Forest City. Former surveyor Peter McGregor, a chain bearer on a surveying party, became one of London's first residents, tavern keepers, and business failures. By 1832, the village of London enjoyed a population of 300 and all the luxuries of pioneer life: general stores, a newspaper, and a growing number of churches, including St. Paul's, the center of economic and social power in the community, and one of the flashpoints of a rebellion. John Harris had moved to London's Eldon House in 1834. As a supporter of the Tory government, British officials hoped the arrival of the new district treasurer would calm any uprisings by reformers bent on introducing American-style democracy. As a member of the establishment, Harris didn't have much luck. The community's first election degenerated into a riot. A year later, rebel forces began to mass in the townships around London. There were threats that Harris, as an agent of the king, would be killed and his home burned. For Harris's wife, Amelia, it was a nightmare revisited. As a young girl, she had witnessed American troops torch her father's home.
There was quite a lot of activity in this area during the rebellion. And John Harris, of course, being a firm supporter of the government that was in place, was against the rebels. There's a wonderful story told of Amelia in the basement making bullets so they could defend themselves if they were attacked.
But the rebellion never amounted to much. Most of the uprisings were badly planned and easily put down by the local militia. Dr. Charles Duncombe, who was responsible for the area's uprising, fled to the States disguised as a woman. Many of his supporters were arrested and held in the London courthouse to await trial and sentencing.
January 27th, 1839. Dear wife, I am at this moment confined in the cell from which I am to go to the scaffold. I received my sentence today and am to be executed on February 6th. I am permitted to see you tomorrow, anytime after 10 o'clock in the morning, as may suit you best. I wish you would think of such questions as you wish to ask me, as I do not know how long you will be permitted to stay. Think as little of my unhappy fate as you can. As from the love you bear me, I know too well how it must affect you. I must say goodbye for the night, and may God protect you and my dear child, and give you fortitude to meet that coming event. That this may be the case is the prayer of your affectionate husband, Joshua G. Doane.
Doane's death sentence was carried out 10 days later.
In the trials that followed, there were 18 people from the area sentenced to death, and 6 of those executions were carried out. The effect of that on the populace was such that they were afraid of another uprising. People were so fed up with the executions by the end of the 6th day that the other 12 people condemned to death had their sentences commuted and were shipped off to Australia.
Officials were also fed up with the political unease in London. In May of 1838, British regiments were stationed in the area. They brought order and economic prosperity to the community. Once again, fate had come to aid of Simcoe's vision.
The garrison was paying in cash, and before this, most of what was done was the barter system. And so with cash, people had money to buy things that they wouldn't have before, and they'd get a better price for their goods and what they would purchase. And it was just tremendous, a number of things that the garrison needed, whether it be accommodation being built for them, or leather goods, straw, hay, food products, and so on like that. So the population must have developed, went 2 or 3 times over in that short time.
No one was happier with London's new prosperity than John Harris, whose home was transformed into the social center of the community. Over the next 2 decades, Eldon House hosted everyone, from officers of the garrison to a future British Prime Minister.
John Harris welcomed the garrison with open arms. Eldon House was immediately known as a place where an officer could receive a meal, a pleasant social evening, and even more than that, John Harris had 7 daughters.
Common soldiers never enjoyed tea and card games at Eldon House, but their voracious thirst for English stock ale and female companionship created other diversions in London. Over the next few years, entrepreneurs and vagabonds of both sexes set up a string of taverns and brothels along Richmond Street. More respectable business operators followed. John Labatt and Thomas Carling sold their farms and moved into town so they could start up breweries. John McClary established a stove company that would be renowned across Canada. And the future of E.W. Hyman's tannery was assured when it landed a lucrative contract to provide harnesses and boots for the garrison. Although these early businesses flourished, their growth was hampered by an inability to export their products. Stagecoaches could only creep along area dirt and wood plank roads. It took most of a day just to travel to St. Thomas. If London was to evolve into a major Canadian city, it needed a better set of wheels. On December 15, 1853, they arrived.
The impact it had on local businesses would be just tremendous, because now you can move things more quickly, in greater quantity. There would be less breakage. The price of things would have dropped as far as the transportation costs over what it had been using rail or using roads before. And the impact it would have, economic impact it would have on society, there probably has been no single other technological innovation that has been so great in the last 200 years as the advent of the railways.
Although it took the first train 6 hours to arrive from Hamilton, the modern transportation age had come to London. Within 5 years, the line would be linked to Windsor, Toronto, and Montreal. London, a wilderness 30 years earlier, would become a bigger city than Detroit or Chicago. City officials were so grateful to the railway, they adopted it as part of London's coat of arms.
Colonel Talbot passed a very bad night and is worse today. Yesterday he would not take any medicine, and today he is afraid he will die. Poor old man, he is very miserable. Charlotte Harris.
Although he had attended the original groundbreaking of the railroad, Thomas Talbot would never live to see its completion or the prosperity it would bring. He died in February of 1853, almost 50 years to the day he had started to settle southwestern Ontario.
As long as you had that man alive, he was a figure, and by the 1850s he represented the settlement, the pioneer period. That period was over in 1853 in December when the Great Western arrived. The pioneer settlement of, well, most of Ontario was over in the 1850s. And so I think he died at a convenient time for us to write the end to that chapter and begin the next phase, the building up of the province.